On this episode of the Sports Opinions podcast, 7-time United States champion, 2-time Olympian in the 800-meter, and head coach of cross country at The Ohio State University, Khadevis Robinson, joins the show as we talk about his fantastic career, how the scripture, the parable of talents, has an effect on both his coaching and his life, and his Dallas Cowboys, and whether or not they have a real shot of being Super Bowl champions this year. And without any further ado, cue the intro. What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions podcast. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta, and with me today is a guy that when I was a young kid growing up, I liked running a lot, and I started to get into track in middle school, and on the screen, I saw this guy who would just run the 800 meters, get out in the front of races, and just control and command it, and he's a beast. He is the head men's and women's cross-country coach at Ohio State University and also an assistant coach in track and field. Philanthropic advisor, author, speaker, 4-time United States champion in the 800-meter, and 2-time Olympian, Khadevis Robinson. What's going on, Khadevis?
Man, thanks for having me. I want to correct you on a couple of those things. The first one is The Ohio State University. I'll be with that D on there. And then also, I'm 7-time U.S. national champion. I won 4 outdoors, but I also won 3 indoors. But thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I got to say, this is coming out a little bit later. Me and Khadevis had some connection issues on Wednesday when I normally record, and I just didn't want to get this out there without the great quality because I really feel like this is going to be such a fun show, and I wanted all the listeners to get a fair shake. Now, you're in Tennessee right now for a meet. What's the name of the meet? What are you guys doing out there cross country? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the Commodore Classic. We have our men's and women's team competing. Only the second meet of the season, so it's a good opportunity to see kind of where we're at. So we're in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been here many times. Glad to be here. Still kind of warm, but we'll take it and see where we're at.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. We didn't go over this, but I have to ask you because I'm asking anyone that is a runner. I don't know if you heard a little while ago, Max Kellerman on ESPN bluntly said that running track and field is a sport that failed ball sport athletes go to, and it's not super difficult to get from point A to point B. What is your gut reaction to that comment by ESPN's Max Kellerman?
To be quite honest with you, I think Max was trying to prove a point or make a point, shall I say. And I think in trying to make a point, he made it in the wrong direction. I think what he was trying to say is a lot of individuals that end up running professional track and field, some of them started out playing other sports, and for whatever reason, they might have, navigated their way to track and field. So I think where he made the mistake was saying that track and field was not a sport. Now, the reality is track and field is probably one of the most pure sports there is for many reasons. For one, it's the most individual of individual sports. And what I mean by that is, for football, basketball, those types of sports are more team-oriented, team sports. So, in other words, you can make a mistake on your position but still get bailed out because someone else is doing pretty well, or make a steal or catch a pass or make a tackle or whatever the situation may be. Whereas in individual sports, if you make a mistake, you're going to feel it. So now let's look at the individual sports. You have, boxing, you have tennis, you have golf, you have all those types of individual sports. And the reason I say track and field is the most individual of individual, because when you look at boxing, you look at tennis, and you look at golf, well, when you look at boxing and tennis, for the most part, it's just one-on-one. So it's you against one other person, right? Now, in golf, yeah, it's you against the whole field, but for the most part, you guys are not competing at the same time. So when you look at track and field, it's an individual sport where it's you against a person, but you're against 6, 7, 8, and depending on the event, if you're talking about 800, mile, 5K, 3K, 10K, steeplechase, marathon, half marathon, it's you against a whole bunch of individuals at the same time. So it's no hiding. It's no getting away from it. So it is the most individual of individual sports. And then also another thing about track and field is that a lot of times, what our event is what other people get for punishment. So back in the day, basketball players would have to do suicides or whatever you want to call it. And then football players have to run laps. And that's kind of what we do. But here's the point I really wanted to make about track and field and running and cross country, where I think is really the biggest difference if you really want to think about it. When you look at any other sport, when they train, right, and they train hard, right, but it's not the same. What do I mean by that? Well, when you're playing football, let's say football, when you're playing basketball, you're doing it in practice at a pretty good level, right? But, or should I say yet, you're not doing it like you will for track. So, for instance, a sprinter in track, when he's in practice, he or she's in practice, they're still going full blast. You see what I'm saying? They're still going really hard, full blast in order to get the type of performances and the carryover they need for a meet. So it's not like you can't, in track and field, you cannot go to practice and just kind of go through plays or kind of go through the motion. No, in order to get better at it, you still in practice and find a way to come back and tap out again in the competition. So what I'm saying is, people say, well, okay, you do the same thing in basketball. Well, it's a little different, because even if you're tapping out in practice, right, you still don't have that same factor of going up against another individual. Well, they'll say, well, in track and field, you don't either, but we have the clock. The clock don't lie. So we still are still running against the clock. So many times in any track and field run, I'll tell you that, any cross-country run, any long-distance run, I'll tell you, some of my best performances have been in practice in certain events. So, for instance, I've run 45 seconds for the 400 meters in practice. And so what that means is you have to put the effort in practice against the clock. So there's no slack. And so I think what Max was trying to say was that there is individuals that started out doing other sports, and that might have been their favorite or main sport at first, and they end up running track and field. But I think he's misinformed when it comes to saying sport or whatever. That's just simply not the case. And then if you really want to put it to another level, not only is track and field the most individual of individual sports and all those types of things, it's truly a global sport. So what I mean by that, the people say world champions when they talk about the Super Bowl champions or baseball World Series and all that type of stuff. But for the most part, it's not world, right? It's simply the U.S. And then if you even add some other sports that's a little bit more global, well, it's still not as global as track and field. That's a fact. I mean, when you look at the Olympics, the World Championships, so any given year, you're getting individuals from for the most part, barring Antarctica, you're getting people from almost all the continents. So even if you start talking about tennis and golf, which are pretty global, I still don't think they're as global for us on the top level as you'll get from track and field when you look at the Olympic Games. So when someone wins an Olympic Games or when someone wins World Championships or whatever it may be, they're truly one of the best in the world.
So what you're saying, I can kind of relate to, because I'm from Manchester, New Jersey, and coming out of the small school of Manchester, New Jersey is Andrew Bauman, who is a member of the 4x4 world record holding team, one of the fastest 400-meter runners of all time. And he was a basketball player turned track runner, and obviously it was the right move for him because he's still involved in everything track and field in the United States today. So I get what you're saying, and branching off what you were talking about with the difficulty, you ran track, and not only did you run track, you decided to compete in one of the arguably the top 3 hardest events. I would say steeple, 400-meter hurdles, and 800 are all some of the most difficult to run, and your personal record is 143.68, which is mind-blowing. There's very few humans that can run half a mile as fast as you can. What was the feeling of running that fast and knowing for, close to the better part of a decade, being the most dominant 800-meter runner for the Americans?
Well, I think it was when you're in it, you don't look at it necessarily that way. You're trying to be the best you can be. And to be quite honest with you, you're trying to be the best in the world. And so you're kind of in a vacuum. I look back now and I knew I was focused, but I never realized how focused I truly was. I truly had blind spots, meaning you have spots in which you simply can't see. And it's not just for track and field, it's for all areas of life, whether it's business, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you, if it's a sport, whether it's whatever it is that you're trying to reach the top level, you're so focused on that you don't really have time to sit back and really enjoy it. So in the same sense that one would think. So when I was on that level for so long, I was so focused on the goal. I'll give you an example. There's an old story. I do a lot of reading, and there's an old story about a robber. He's a thief, and he went to a market, and the market was full. I mean, the market was totally full. I mean, it was people everywhere. And he went to the market, and he stole some gold, and he took off running. And so everybody started chasing him. Police chased him. They caught him, and they say, hey, man, I mean, come on now. I mean, you got to be smart in this. You went and you stole that gold, and all these people are around. I mean, everybody's around. People can see the police is here. I mean, why'd you steal the gold when you can see all the people is around? He said, at the time, I only saw the gold. And that's kind of how it is in life. It's like you're only seeing what you're focused on. He only saw the gold that he was stealing. He didn't see all the other people and everything else because he was so focused on that gold. Well, I think sometimes in life, we're like that. And whatever our goals with an S at the end, whatever those are, we're so focused on it and consumed by it, we don't see the other things that's going on. So I was so focused on being the best that I could be. I really wasn't sitting back going, oh, I'm number one in the U.S. or top 10 in the world or whatever. I knew I was, but it wasn't something that I was what you call parking at. I was more so focused on how do I become better.
And it's really funny that you say that because a little while ago I had Maurice Green on, and he really mentioned the same thing as when you're in it, you don't think about it that way. You're so focused on training and getting better and being the best in the world that everything else is kind of on the back burner. And I just remember watching you compete, and I was fairly young when I first started watching you. I was in middle school and just watching you, and you were kind of the lone representative, like that really had a big chance on a world stage from our middle distance group. Like you were the American representative. And I feel like you really ushered in this solid group of middle distance runners that we currently see coming in right now when Nick Simmons, Dwayne Solomon, Robbie Andrews, Matt Centrowitz, and all these solid runners that now compete on a world stage regularly. You were the one leading that in, and you were kind of the standard since Johnny Gray was around.
Yeah, I think what ended up happening is that as the events became more global, as you got to a point where, especially the 800 was probably the most diverse or most global event out there because you had, you had to have a balance of speed and endurance. So you had a lot of individuals from other countries that can be competitive in it. And so I think it got to a point where, the East Africans were really, really being somewhat dominant. And it wasn't many at the time because the guys who were the top runners, as far as Johnny Gray, Mark Everett, and all those types of guys, was kind of on the they was older at that point. They was kind of on their way out. And so there was this gap, and so for me, to be quite honest with you, I never did anything for as impressive for as high school. I mean, in college, I won a national championship, but I mean, come on, the best I finished in high school was fourth place at the state meet. I mean, I only made the state meet one time in high school. That was my senior year. I mean, I did nothing impressive. Never got a full scholarship. I didn't take any official visits except one, and that was to TCU. And I'm from Fort Worth. I'm about 7 miles from TCU, and that was the official visit. I didn't stay overnight. So I didn't take any visits, and this is the honest to God truth. Didn't get a full, didn't get 90, didn't get 80, didn't get 70. I had to take out, loans to go to a college. And by the time I was a senior, I had enough, I got enough scholarship by then to be all right and wouldn't have to take out loans. But the point I'm making is I wasn't the guy, but by my senior year, of course I ran well, won a national championship and those types of things. So what I'm trying to say is I developed into a pretty tough competitor for his performance. And I just tried to carry it over to the pro level. And I learned a lot. The biggest thing is that I learned, how to be competitive in a situation in which maybe you didn't have an advantage. And as a kid coming from high school or college, that's a hard thing to grapple with. You're usually able to get in a situation and say, okay, I'm a little bit faster than this guy, or I'm a little bit stronger, or I'm a little bit smarter, or whatever profession you're in, you usually have some type of advantage. Or like playing cards, you usually have a joker or an ace that you can always pull out. On the professional level for track and field and cross country, that's not always the case. So you have to learn how mentally to be able to find a way to think that you can win, even though you don't have an advantage.
Now, your style of running is something I envied because I was more of a sit and kick type of guy. And there's two different types of runners. There's the ones that get out there and mix it up, can lead a race from, wire to wire, very confident. And then there's a sit and kick who we're confident that in the end, as long as we're within striking distance, we can win. Where did you get your style? Was it from this, you weren't that big guy and you had to really work your ass off to get where you needed to be? Is that where you got that style? Because that's more of a Prefontaine style than what I was used to, being kind of more of a sit and kicker. And on the world stage, I feel like your style does you a lot more favors than mine.
Well, here's the deal. My rationale was, why sit and kick if you feel like you're better than everybody? Why give individuals a chance when you're better than they are? I never understood individuals that would sit and kick and they're 3 seconds faster than everybody. So for me, it didn't make sense. It just gave everybody an opportunity to beat you. Plus, I was out there at Santa Monica Track Club. Johnny Gray was out there, and, he talked about taking people to the Twilight Zone. So for me, it was more so running that way. Here's the thing. Here's the reality. Reality in life, not just track, in life, when things get hard, most people do what?
Either fight or flight.
Well, I'm asking you, when things get hard, most people do what? They quit.
Yeah.
When things get hard, most people in life, forget track, in life, when things get really hard, most people quit. So I figured, okay, let's try this. If I make this thing hard, then probably 70% of the people are just going to quit. That don't mean they're going to stop and just stop running. They'll keep running, but for the most part, they've already told themselves they're not going to get first or second.
Oh, yeah, the legs start getting heavy. Their arms don't drive as much. They get in their head.
Yeah, so they forget that guy. He's going out too fast, whatever. So now, really, I'm only running against a select few individuals. And then if those select few individuals ain't training properly, then, then I'm only running against a couple of more. And then out of those couple more, it just comes down to who wants it the most, right? So that's kind of the way I came up with that style of running. Now, as you get on the world class, like top 20, top 15, well, it's just the law of averages kick in. And what I mean by that is, well, if you're talking about, the world got billions of people, well, you're going to get enough of those that they'll be able to handle that. And so starting out, that's the way I ran, because I didn't have an advantage for as talent or none of that type of stuff. So I used my advantage of knowing that I worked hard, knowing that I was mentally tough to really give myself an edge. And then the way I looked at it is, if I did that enough, at least when I race some people, they would respect me and say, you know what, I might beat this guy, but he's going to fight me,
Yeah, and it's funny because I coached a little at Marist College. I coached the middle distance guys, and I coached the exact opposite the way I ran. I did not coach in the sit and kick. I always told them to go out hard, not stupid, but go out hard, because you're going to fade anyway, so you might as well fade to a good time and fight instead of fade to a crappy time. Now, how do you bring what your experiences are into coaching at Ohio State right now, the Ohio State?
Well, I coach the individual, so everybody's different. If you recall, my last year competing professionally in 2012, I was up there in age, and I made a team. I made the Olympic team, and I ran from the back. I was in dead last at 500 meters, so I learned. In other words, at that point, enough of the younger guys that had come up, and they was prepared for me to lead and all those types of things. So I had to change up my strategy. So it wasn't a situation in which I just got to races and thought I'm going to lead and run. No, I was doing that at the time because it gave me the best opportunity and chances of being successful. When it got to a point where either A, I couldn't do it at the same level, or B, people was catching on to it, or C, it wasn't toward my benefit, then I was able to change up and run a different strategy. And I think we all should do that in life. You stick to what works for you, but when you find out that maybe it's not working the same way, or people are adjusting, adapting to it, and you got to come up with a different plan. And that's what I did.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember that race clearly. Everyone was basically waiting for 300 meters for you to go and take it out from like 49 to 51, where you typically were, because you always went out quick. And then it ended up being in like 53. And I think you put a smile on your face when you hit that line, because you knew you were just going to be stronger than everyone and get where you needed to be.
Yeah, it was something I had pretty much practiced for 2 years, just being able to finish the last point. I knew that the race was going to come down to the last. We still ran 144 lows, but I just knew it was going to come down to the end, because I knew it was some tough guys there. And lo and behold, two of the guys are 142 guys, so you know how that goes.
Yep. So we talked, and one of the things that, you wanted to talk about, and it was the only thing, I always ask a little questionnaire at the beginning to all my guests. And one of the things I always ask, what topic do you want to talk about in sports? And you mentioned the parable of talents. To those that don't know, parable of talents is a biblical scripture. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the general gist is that a master gives 3 slaves different amounts of talents. Now, in the Bible, talents were amounts of money. It wasn't the way we think of talent, but it works out that way. He gave one servant, I believe it was 5 talents, 3 talents, and 1 talent. The 2 servants that got 5 and 3 talents worked and doubled their talents. The one with 1 talent just sat on it. And when the master came back, he rewarded the other 2 for using the talents they have and making them better. And he scolded the one that just sat on it. You wanted to talk about that. What does that message mean to you, and how do you bring that into sport?
Well, that's the message that I speak about. That's the message of my keynote speech, and it's the message of the book I'm writing right now. The parable of the talents is speaking about we all have talents and gifts that the universe or God or whatever is given to you. Talents and gifts that the universe or God hands your way, right? And some of us get different amounts. You hear people say, well, this person was raised in this family. This person was born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Or I was raised and I didn't have anything, or whatever, right? And Carl Lewis told me, said, Katie, in life, we all get opportunities, right? Some people get a lot of opportunities. Some people don't get many opportunities. Some people get big opportunities. Some people get small. But the thing is, in life, everyone gets some opportunities. And the key is not about, how many opportunities you get or how big the opportunities are. The key is taking advantage of the opportunities you get. So if you get 10 opportunities, take advantage of all 10. If you get 4, just take advantage of all 4. Because some people get 100, they only take advantage of 5, and some people get 80, take advantage of all 8, they beat them. So what I realized is that, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, has given each and every one of us some talent, some gift. We've given some people some gifts of being able to sing. Some people can add. Some people are charismatic. Some people look good. Others might, be able to dance. I mean, whatever it is, we all have different talents and gifts. And it's not so much important on how many talents and gifts the universe has given us or how big the talents and gifts are. What's important is, okay, recognize. First thing, recognize what is the talent and gift that God or the universe gave you. Don't downplay it. Don't say, well, the only thing I can do good is make a bed. Well, I mean, hey, that's something. Everybody can't make a bed. The only thing I can do good is make people feel good when I'm singing. Or whatever it is. Whatever it is, recognize it. Okay, this is a talent. This is a gift that the universe of God has given me. Secondly, once you have recognized what that talent and gift is, now learn how to use it. So say, okay, my talent and gift is the ability to paint. Okay, you know what? There's kids that's in the hospital that's sick. They can't leave their bed. Maybe I can paint something pretty for them again. So now you know how to use it. Once you learn how to use it, you have to multiply, make it better and multiply. Keep practicing it, keep making it better, taking it to other places. And what the spiritual books, not only the Bible, but every spiritual book it is, says that whatever your talent and gift is, if you use it, recognize it, use it, and multiply it, then the universe, God, or whatever you believe in will give you more. But the catch is, if you don't, even the one you have will be taken away. So that's what the example was of the parable of talents. It's like the one slave had 10 talents, the one had 5, and one had 1. And the one had 10 multiplied his, and the one had 5 multiplied his. And for the most part, Jesus said, okay, you know what? I gave you some. You've been very faithful over the little I gave you, so I'm going to give you more, right? So if you walk in the house right now, you see your son or your kids, and you give your kid $5, and they go to the store and they spend all their money on candy, and they come back. Well, the next day you're not going to give them $5 because they're gonna misuse it, right?
Yep.
But if you give your kid $5 and he saves the $5 and buys $1 worth of candy, now you feel very comfortable with giving them a little bit more than $5, right? Same thing. So the universe has decided to give us a talent and gift. Now we're complaining. If you complain about the small talents and gifts that you have, well, you're not being faithful with the talents and gifts that you have. If you waste that talent and gift, why would the universe of God give you more if you're going to waste the small amount you have? Well, that's what happens. We all have talents and gifts. And what the book says is that if you have talents and gifts, you recognize it, you use it, you multiply it, and you share it, you will get more. But the catch is, if you have talents and gifts and you don't recognize it, use it, multiply it, and share it, even the ones you have will be taken away from you. So if I go in the house and I give my kid $3, and they go and they blow it with $3, and they just laying. Every time I walk in the house in their room, the dollar just laying on the bed. It's just next time it's on the floor. Next time he don't even know where it's at. Well, I'm gonna take it away from him, right?
Yep.
And I might give it to his older brother and say, you know what, Zion, keep this dollar for Ishmael, because Ishmael don't even know how to keep a dollar in his pocket. So it's the same thing in life. It's like God or the universe or whatever you believe in has given us some talents and gifts, and most people are sitting around not using it. They're saying, they're looking at people on TV. Oh, look at that politician. When I was in high school, when I was in college, I was better than him. Oh, look at that. Look at Khadevis Robinson. He's running. When I was in high school, I was a faster runner than he was. Oh, look at this person. Oh, look at that person. And they're wondering how in the world did someone they used to beat or be better than, now they're watching them on TV. Well, you had the talent and the gift. You never recognized it. You never used it. You never multiplied it. You never shared it. So that was taken away from me. It was given to me. Now, listen, I didn't set this thing up. God said that when you get your own planet, you can set it up how you want to set it up.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is, this is the way these things are. And we all know that. You know it. Everybody, you can meet everybody in the world, and they'll tell you, you know what? There are people doing some things that I know I should be doing. I can do it better than them. And they're wondering why. Now, here's the thing that always throws people off. They say, well, I'm a good person. Or they say, well, that person's a turd. He a bad person. Why he out? Hold on. Oh, man, we keep saying that this guy right here, man, he's a bad person. He's a turd. He keeps getting all the girls. Check it out. He's charismatic. He's funny. Now, it doesn't say you have to be a good person. It doesn't say if you multiply, share, and use it, you must be a good person to get more. No, it just says if you have a talent and a gift, you multiply it, use it, and share it, you will get more. And it didn't say if you didn't and you're a good person, it won't be taken away. You know, you can be a great person. You can be a really good person, have talents and gifts. If you don't use it, it's getting taken away. And guess who's going to be given to? The bad person that's using theirs. So we have to realize it ain't about being good. We're not talking about good or bad or right or wrong. That's in the universe's hand. That's in God's hand. What you got control over is yourself, the talents and gifts that you have, and using it. So for me personally, running was one of those things. I might not have been able to win an Olympic medal or whatever the situation is, but I had a talent and a gift, and the talent and the gift was to run, but it wasn't really running. Running was just a vehicle for me to get my message out there. So our job is to recognize whatever talents and gifts we have and to use it. Don't get caught up in how much money you're going to make. Don't get caught up in how people are going to perceive it. Don't get caught up in what they're going to think about you. Because if you don't use it, it's going to be taken away. And 10 years later, you're going to be sitting at the house or with somebody. There's people right now talking about, man, when I was in high school, I was the best football player. And then, I could have went to the NFL.
So many of those.
I couldn't chase them girls. Well, no, you couldn't have been in the NFL then, you know? You saying it, I could have been the best, whatever. I could have made the best. No, because you didn't use your talents and gifts. And that's my message.
So you said you have a book coming out. Do you have a name for that book yet?
Well, not specifically. It's going to be, it's going to come off of Khadevism. I mean, I don't know if you follow me on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn, but Khadevism is kind of my, Khadevism is my thing. And it'll be Khadevism, the parable of the talents. And it's just essentially going to talk about, I'll tell you this. I travel a lot. I just got back from Zimbabwe, and I tell you, they say the most common thing in the world is potential. Potential is the most common thing in the world, and there's so many people that's dying with their talents left in them, and it's sad because it's like it's as if we got another life after this one. And whether you believe in heaven or whatever the afterlife, that's fine. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm saying is, what we do know is that this is the life we have right now, and it's like we're saving it for a different time, right? And it's like I just want to make sure that people understand that the talents and gifts that they have, somebody needs it. There are people that need it. And when I went to Zimbabwe, I realized that some people just needed to hear this. Sometimes I'm giving this exact same message that I'm giving you right now. I'm giving it to people, and tears come in their eyes. And they say, I knew it. And I say, what you mean? They say, I knew it. And they was like, I was praying about this, 7 months ago, but they needed to hear it. And if we don't give it out, it's like, what have we done? And that's the thing. That's the beauty that we live in right now. We live in a time in which you can connect with almost anybody at any time. We have no excuse not to at least try. But there are people that they're not getting the memo. They're not getting the message. They're thinking that whatever it is that they have to offer, no one needs it. No, you got to understand, everything that you get is not about necessarily making money from it. Les Brown said this. He said, He said work, like doing a job, right? He said man, in a generic sense, wasn't meant to work for a living, which is about getting, but to live his making. And living your making will make you a living. Now that's so deep. Because he's saying, yeah, we weren't meant to just work for a living. I mean, we weren't meant to just be working, just working for a living. No, we supposed to live our making. And if we live our making, that'll make us a living. But see, we get so caught up in saying we didn't make this much or we didn't do that and this and that. And we just don't even use our gifts and talents. And the next thing you know, we way down the line. And then I talk to people and they say, well, I'm going to do it when I retire. No, you're not. You're not going to be wanting to hike Mount Kilimanjaro when you're 75. You're not going to be wanting to do all the swim this much or jump around when you're 65 and 70, 75 and 80 years old. You might, but for the odds is against it. You better get it now. How do you know you even going to be living then? Right?
No one knows.
I mean, come on. People who went inside that Walmart in El Paso, they was planning for all sorts of stuff, never made it out.
Yep.
So my point is, in life, people be asking me, KD, how did you go to Zimbabwe? What you mean, how did I go to Zimbabwe? I bought a ticket, went over to Zimbabwe. Now, it wasn't that simple, but my point is, why are you saying you can't do some of the same things that you can do? You're making a distinct choice. And we live in a time, in a day and age in which we can go do all these amazing things. We can go to Africa, we can go to Asia, we can go to all these different places, we can experience all these different things, and we're making every excuse of why we can't do it. We live in the greatest country in the world. The greatest country in the world. And we're making excuses on why we can't accomplish something, right? Uh-huh. And it's just sad.
Too often.
Yeah, and it is. It's sad when people ask me those questions, even about running. People say, okay, man, you're such a good runner, and you did. Man, come on. I'm like Will Smith. I'm just a guy. In running, this is all I did when it came to running. I recognized what worked for me, and I kept doing that. Then I noticed what didn't work for me, and I stopped doing that. And then I recognized most people, when things get hard, they quit. So I knew I had to get to the point where things got hard because I knew my competition would be lighter. And then I recognized parallel talents. I knew that if I continue to develop my talents, I'll be giving more. And that's it. And I did that with running. And when I did it till I was to a point where I thought I had reached enough people and accomplished some goals, and then I got into something else. And now with this something else, I'm doing the same thing. That's it.
And it's exciting what you're doing. I think it's great. And I have to say, I consider all my guests that come on here, once we're done here, I consider all of us friends, whether or not you guys like it or not. You're all my friends now. But with that, I'm expecting a copy of that book, whether I'll pay for it. I don't care how I got to get it, whether I pay for it. I just want it. And because I want to read it, whether it's an advanced copy, I would love to read it before everyone else so I could brag to people, because that would be awesome. But I just want to read it because I feel like your message would be fantastic for anyone to just read, because I do read your Khadevisms and they're awesome. I mean, there's certain things that I believe if we just read them once a day, we'll just be happier. And I'm not I try going back to church as often as possible, but I'm not the most religious person. But if you pick certain things that are uplifting to you, good stories, doesn't have to be a Bible, doesn't even have to be a Khadevism, but something that's positive to you, and you read that once a day and it makes you come back down to the ground and realize that it's not, whatever you're worried about isn't that important. We talk about sports here on the podcast. They're not that important. It's what I love. It's part of my passion. I enjoy talking and meeting new and awesome and interesting people. But, like you said, I enjoy talking. I love talking sports. So I decided that I think I'm pretty good at talking. So let me take it to the podcast form. So it's kind of what you're talking about with the Parable of Talents, where instead of sitting at work and talking about sports all day, I'm bringing it here to this forum. And I'm hoping that certain people hear this and enjoy it and go, you know what? I needed that in my life. I'm going to listen to it often because that'll be pretty cool. So one thing I have to ask you on this topic is, right now we're in the generation, my generation is the millennials, and we are what a lot of people call the everybody gets a trophy generation, the give me generation, where it seems like hard work. Yeah, there are still a group of us that work hard, but there's a lot of us in America in my generation that really are just super entitled for very little reasons. They just expect everything given to them. And I feel like we just need to have you connect with all of them and just preach about the Parable of Talents. And maybe if you get to a quarter of them, we might have a chance.
Well, you know what it is? I'm going to tell you what it is. You know whose fault that is? It's the parents. It's us.
But you can't say that anymore, Khadevis. That's not, people don't, then that's the problem. The parents don't even want to hear that.
Well, but hear me out. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. We got to a level and we said this: I want my kids to have it better than I had. I don't want them to have to go through the same things I had to go through. Now let me ask you a question, and everybody needs to hear this. What if the butterfly said the same thing? What if the butterfly said, you know what? I was in that damn cocoon for so long, and I had to struggle to get out of that cocoon. I mean, I remember peeking my eye out, I couldn't get out, and it took me a day, and I had to struggle, and I had to struggle, and I had to struggle, and it took me forever. So you know what? I'm not going to have my kid go through that. I'm going to make sure when I see my kid in that cocoon, I'm going to open the cocoon open a little bit so he can get out the cocoon a little bit earlier. Now, Les Brown talks about a little kid seeing a butterfly trying to get out of the cocoon. He used his little safety pin, opened it up. The butterfly came out, fluttered a little bit, hit the ground, and died. Yep. Because the struggle itself gave it life. It needed to struggle through that cocoon to get out so its wings could be strong enough so it could fly. But you see, if the butterfly would say, you know what, I don't want my kid to have to struggle the same amount in the same way I struggled, then that butterfly baby would never be able to get strong enough to ever live. And that's what we've done. We've said we don't want our kids to struggle so much. We've taken away some of the struggle, but it's the struggle itself that gives it life. There are kids nowadays that don't even know how to fight. And you say, well, they shouldn't have to fight. Well, no, hold on now. There's something you learn about yourself when you fight. That don't mean pick a fight. It means you have to figure out what do you need to do in this situation, right? You got to figure that out. And when you do fight, you learn. Sometimes you get respect from each other and all those types of things. Those kids don't know how to talk themselves out of a fight.
I made some of my best friends from fighting. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, we all did. We all did. But even if you can't fight, even if you don't want to fight, there's something in learning how to talk yourself out of a fight. There's been fights that I didn't want, but I talked as if I was tough. I talked and made them think that I was tough and I was ready to fight. And they said, you know what, I might not want to fight this dude. This dude's like, he's ready. And I was scared out of my mind. I really didn't want to fight. But that's a skill set that I had to learn by being in that situation.
Yeah, he's crazy. He ain't worth it.
Yeah, people nowadays, we don't want them to go through that.
Nope.
We want them to get the medals without having. It's the parents. It's the parents that didn't want the kids. And then you hear the parents say, well, I don't know who kid that is because I didn't. Well, no, you didn't have a choice. You had to walk to school and you had to get a little rain on you. You had to go through all these different things in order to become who you've become. And now we want to take that away and then blame the kid.
There was no.
That's just simply not right. So that's what's going on.
God.
Excuse me?
I said there were no safe spaces back then, and it made a lot of people tougher.
Oh yeah, but again, this is something that we're in right now when it comes to the internet, and I'm not calling it all bad because it can be. This is stuff that there's some good parts that come from it also, but right now we're not preparing, our kids and the world for what's coming. The world is global now. Let's just call it what it is. It's a global world, and so people are going to have to be able to adjust and adapt in what's going on right now. And I was telling you, messages and podcasts like this one is important because even though you might not know that people are getting a lot out of it, you are. When I missed the team in 2008 and I ended up being fourth and I dove the line and didn't make it, it was at that point that people started coming up to me telling me how much my interviews motivated them, how much my running made them feel excited and brave and all. I never knew. You see, it took me to so-called fail for them to feel like I was vulnerable and for them to feel comfortable enough to come up to me and tell me how much of an effect I was having on them. So I think this is the message that needs to be out there. I tell you this, and I used to volunteer when I was at TCU at a little school. And the kids were really, really young. And I did it. I was a social work major. I got my bachelor's in social work and my master's in public administration. But I used to put hours in. And lo and behold, after I graduated, I moved to California. And about 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 years later, because when I was in school, we didn't have Facebook. But about 10 years later, I get a friend request on Facebook. And the friend request said this: "Hello, Mr. Robinson." This is a guy, like he's about 20-some years old, maybe. He had hair on his face. He said, "My name is such and such. I'm that little kid you used to work with over at the school by TCU. And I just want to thank you. I remember when you said this and this and that and this and that. And I want you to know that I went to the service. I'm in school and I'm doing all this thing. And I want to thank." I got chills. I didn't have a clue that working with that kid during that time made such an influence on his life. And that's kind of how these things go. And it could change his life. And one day, 15, 20 years from now, he might go somewhere and say, you know what? I remember this guy named Khadevis Robinson and blase, blase, blase. And if I can do that, I think I've been successful.
I agree. And it's interesting because this is the Sports Opinions podcast, the sports podcast, but this is exactly what I want to get out of it. I don't always need to talk X's and O's or sports, even though towards the end of this, we are going to talk more direct sports. But it's more about just connecting whatever the guest wants to talk about and making these connections between sports and other parts of life. And I feel like that is great. And that's what sport can also teach. And Parable of Talents, I think, definitely branches across everything we do in life. And this is going to branch into our more direct sports topic because we're going to talk about your favorite team who I think a lot of their greatest players at the time still didn't take advantage of the Parable of Talents and kind of rested on their laurels and were just fantastic. You're Dallas Cowboys. You're a Cowboys fan. They've had some amazing teams and players where they've underachieved. This team that they currently have is a great team. They have Ezekiel Elliott. They have Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup. That offensive line's fantastic. Their defense is good. What do you see from them right now? Are they Super Bowl contenders as we sit?
Yeah, I think for a fact the Cowboys have a chance. They have some pieces in place, but I think I think when you look at teams now, when you look at whether it's basketball, football, any team sport, what these teams have is they have a system in place. I always say success leaves clues, but failure does also. So I think obviously the Cowboys got Ezekiel Elliott and they have, the quarterback, Dak Prescott, and all those guys that are really good. And then on the defensive side, they have some pieces in place. But I think you have to look at the teams that have been consistently good. They have more than just, if you take the New England Patriots, well, as long as they have two people in place, they tend to do well. And those two pieces is Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. And if you want to really be honest, even the years in which Tom Brady didn't play, the backup quarterback still did well. So I think when you're looking at sports now, you got to have one of those things in place, and maybe Ezekiel Elliott and or Dak Prescott can step it up for that. But if the coaches, general managers, those people are not building the foundation, then it's going to be a challenge.
Now, Jason Garrett, you talked about coaching. The head coach of the Cowboys, Jason Garrett, gets ripped a lot because a lot of people don't think he deserves to continue to be the coach as long as he's been. I think he's a pretty good coach. I think a few years ago when Tony Romo was at the end of his run and Des Bryant reached and scored and they called it a fumble, that was absolutely a touchdown. They should have went to the Super Bowl then, or at least the NFC championships. I think Jason Garrett has done a really good job with the Cowboys. I think there are a lot of times where the Cowboys have underachieved. If we go by the first game, Dak Prescott on that offense against the Giants looked great. He has not gotten paid yet. Does Dak Prescott deserve to be paid with the likes of Jared Goff and Carson Wentz as two contemporaries from his draft class and even make more than them right now?
Everybody's value is a bit different. Most jobs only pay you enough that you don't quit. And most people only work as hard enough that they don't get fired. So I think, you want to pay people what you think they're worth. For me, you started out by talking about Jason Garrett and what he's done, and you said he's done a good job. Well, the Cowboys are not trying to be good. They're trying to be great. So there's a difference. Good is the enemy of great. So if you're satisfied with doing good, then you never get to that next level. So I think when you look at what a coach is doing, I think you're finding out that a lot of the new coaches nowadays are putting in systems and stuff in place that maximizes their ability to win. Two stories. First story is, they talked about a couple of years ago when Bill Belichick had those guys preparing. They was going to play a team, and that team had a punter that had a problem handling balls when the weather was wet. So the forecast for that weekend was going to rain. And so Bill Belichick had those guys practicing, and he had their punter who was practicing fumbling with the ball and stuff. And all the players thought, this is silly, man. What's the odds that this guy's going to get a pass. I mean, get a punt. It's going to be raining. He's going to fumble, and we'll get it. You know, and they were like, they kept working on this play over and over and over and over again. Lo and behold, they get to the game. It's raining. Guy fumble. They pick it up and score a touchdown to get the ball or whatever. So what does that mean? It's just, okay, little stuff like that's coaching. That's a whole nother level, right? Secondly, you say, okay, earlier this season, they had a preseason practice or whatever, and Tom Brady wasn't even practicing. He was there, padded up, but he wasn't actually practicing. And they're practicing. One of the rookie receivers or first year guys with the Patriots had forgot to play. He forgot how to run a route or what the play was, whatever. So Bill Belichick was telling him, okay, you forgot it, got pissed off. Now, this is a preseason practice. Now, of course, people are going to forget the plays and all that type of stuff. But he gets pissed and said, okay, you guys are going to have to run. And guess who else had to run? Tom Brady, even though he wasn't even in. He wasn't even practicing that time, right? That sends a whole other message like, damn, here's a guy who done won 5, 6, whatever Super Bowls, MVP the whole years old, ain't even practicing. And because some rookie guy who might not even play, that forgot to play, he has to run too. So that sends a message to the whole team. So what I'm saying is that's a whole nother level, right? It's a whole nother level on which what the expectations may be. So what's happening is, you start talking about Dak Prescott and then Ezekiel Elliott. And Ezekiel Elliott's, he's a Buckeye. And so obviously his sister is on our track and field team, a great girl. But what I'm saying is we have to ask ourselves, if the Cowboys were to play the Patriots in the Super Bowl and you have Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott and they're playing the New England Patriots, the odds, I would hope it doesn't happen. I'm a Cowboys fan. But the odds are Belichick's probably going to find a way to stop them. You know what I mean? Because that's what they do. They find a way to stop the opposing team's best players. So the question would be, would Jason Garrett is his coaching skills good enough that he could counterbalance that? Last year, the team that they played had one of the best offenses we have seen in a long time. They barely scored 3 points, man.
Yeah, I respect the Patriots as well. I'm a Jets fan, though, so it hurts my heart to hear you talking and saying, like, the Patriots are going to be back in the Super Bowl and even making that semi-prediction. It just hurts me on the inside because there is such a really good chance of it.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not a big Patriots fan. I'm definitely not a Tom Brady fan. But
you got to respect them, though.
Hey, man, listen, success leaves clues. Yep. I keep saying it. Failure does, too. And so it's like math. You find a common denominator. What's the common denominator? It hasn't been a team that, they have all these good players, they doing A, B, and C, and then they go against it. No, I mean, Belichick's smart enough to know, okay, this is what they're doing. You might beat us, but you're not going to beat us doing the stuff you've been doing. And if you're not smart enough to know they're going to try to take away your best and adjust, well, come on, you're going to get beat. It's plain and simple. So I guess what I'm saying is, but that's everything in life, and that's especially sports, is like learning how to adjust and adapt. The day of just being better and just out hustling somebody in a team sport in this manner, it's not necessarily always going to be the best way of winning anymore. And I think when you look at pro sports and college sports now, you're starting to see that being able to be creative and adjust and adapt becomes extremely important.
So now I got to put it on you right now. 2 questions. What do you think the Cowboys record ends up as? And are you predicting Super Bowl for them?
Man, but they're in the NFC, so I mean they can go 12-4. I mean, I just on the NFC side. I mean, what other teams are extremely solid? What teams? I mean, you
got
look
Rams, Saints. Really, that's probably the 2 biggest threats.
Yeah, I'll say so. You say Rams and Saints, right? So you say who else?
Eagles are there. The Eagles have a good offense.
To me, the Eagles are the most dangerous. Obviously, the Saints can, but with that whole offensive stuff, that can be stopped, and it's the same with the Rams. I think you gotta have a run game, and then B, you gotta have a defense. And I think Cowboys' advantage is that they do have a run game. They can control the clock. If you can control the clock, the best defense sometimes is an offense. So I think that's where I think the Eagles have a chance. But that being said, they have to hope that some other team's able to, beat whoever the AFC team is. And I just don't know if I just don't know if a lot of teams are preparing to be successful on this level the way they would need to be. And so I think the Cowboys can go 12-4. I think they'll slip up here and there, and I think they'll, meet a couple of teams that they ain't prepared for. But I think if there was ever a time they can make a Super Bowl, this should be the year.
I'll give you an easier question. I'll get you some brownie points with your school that you're coaching at there. Ohio State Buckeyes are at Indiana tomorrow. How bad do they beat them by in football?
Man, it's hard to call because I think was it last year? It was either last year or the year before we lost to a team. Maybe it was – I forgot who it was. We lost to a team in this same similar situation. I don't know how badly they'll beat them. I would assume they're on the roll right now, so I think they will win. I think there's a lot of things in place, and so the new coach seemed to have the kids extremely excited and playing hard. And so it's a good way to start the season if, once they win this game and keep rolling.
I'm saying 30-plus points because you guys got to smell blood with how bad Michigan has looked. You guys have to smell blood. I'm a Rutgers fan, but, God, I want Michigan to lose.
I mean, they will. They'll lose. I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of good, I guess, for the rivalry and everything if they're not losing too much too soon,
Yeah, I guess. The rivalries are necessary. But, all right, Khadevis, with that, we are going to close out this show. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Again, I'm Alex Cuesta, host of the Sports Opinions podcast. This was Khadevis Robinson. He is a 7-time U.S. champion in the 800-meter indoor and outdoor, 2-time Olympian, head men's and women's cross-country coach over at The Ohio State University. He is an author, a speaker, philanthropic advisor, and if anyone could tell by listening to this, a really intelligent, deep thinker, and you're going to get a lot of wisdom just from listening to him. Khadevis, do you have any social media plugs or anything you want to give out where people can find you?
Yeah, so my name is Khadevis. That's spelled K as in kind, H as in happy, A as in attitude, D as in dedicated, E as in excellent, V as in victory, I as independent, and S as in success. And that's on all of my social media platforms. It's at Khadevis. And so I try to put information and things up that you can help. I mean, that you can get and tools that'll help you just kind of get through the everyday struggles of life. So at Khadevis, book's coming out. Got one out right now called When Seconds Count. But my next book's going to be about the parable of the talents. And I look forward to hearing from everyone.
I appreciate it. And again, I'm Alex Cuesta. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. Instagram, Sports Opinions 30. Go find us on Facebook. And anywhere you're listening, make sure you give this a high rating, a good review. Better ratings and reviews push us higher up so Khadevis Robinson and other great guests like him can get their voices heard more often. And we can grow, and all of our great guests can grow with us. And again, everyone, I really appreciate you listening. Have a good one.